Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to a new series that we're starting here on my YouTube chess channel. Welcome to the studies of the beautiful Catalan Opening. And the Catalan Opening is, in my opinion, one of the best openings that you can play in the world. It's such a beautiful double-edged opening in which black is winning many times the game, white is winning many times the game. There are so many cool opportunities for both sides, really dirty opening traps, dirty tactical ideas. So it's, I think, an opening really worth the study. And if you have followed maybe recently the top grandmaster games, many times they playing the Catalan Opening, especially Magnus Carlsen. I've seen now many times Magnus pulling off very cool tactical ideas in the Catalan for both sides. Of course, as I said, nothing wrong if you face the Catalan. There are many opportunities for black, as I said, but in my opinion, very an opening worth the study. So this will be, I think, a long series, a very important series, like the Queen's Gambit Decline series. If you have followed maybe my YouTube chess channel, then you know we have covered more than 100 videos about the Queen's Gambit Decline. So the Catalan will be not maybe so long, but also very important in my opinion. These two playlists you have to watch to combine, because many opportunities of the Queen's Gambit Decline will see also in the Catalan Opening. So as I said, be prepared. This will be very important what we'll study here in continuation of my YouTube chess channel. So before we start to analyze now the Catalan Opening in our introduction video, I wanted to also tell you that I've covered already many great games played by top engines and played also by Magnus Carlsen and also some other top grandmasters, and I've made the decision that I will leave these games in our playlist of the Catalan Opening because they're really worthwhile, they are really cool. Especially the top engine games are giving us new opportunities in particular sidelines of openings, so I think they're very important. So that's why I've decided to leave them on the playlist. And the concept, the whole playlist will be set up like this. So first we'll see introduction video, this will be this video, and then you'll see, I don't know, maybe how to play the closed Catalan, how to play the open Catalan, and then at the bottom of the playlist will be the cool analyzed games that we have studied already here on my YouTube chat channel. I hope you agree with me, because I think maybe some of these games are not meeting with some strategic concepts that we'll analyze in this series. But as I said, they're really important, especially as I said, the top engine games are really incredible with cool immortal tactical sequences. So it will be, as I said, also very cool to follow these games in the continuation of our series. So let's see now what is the Catalan Opening and what are the basic strategic concepts now for both sides, in particular sidelines and also in some other approaches. So here our first move is the move d4. We have now the move knight to f6, and after move c4, black can play of course also different mover, but we want to reach now this position. After move e6, we're playing now the move g3, and usually there are two concepts that black can play now. Black can maybe go into Benoni even structures after move c4, c5, d5. But what we'll analyze in the continuation of the series will be only this move, d5, which is now this Queen's Gambit Decline structure, but in a Catalan way, of course, with this very aggressive approach with the move bishop to g2, and then of course you're already played g3. So it will be a sharper line, because in the usual Queen's Gambit Decline, so let's see, maybe you play knight to f3, d5, knight to c3, for instance, is the three knights variation. It's a more positional approach to the game, where you don't have to necessarily play the move g3, bishop to g2, but in the Catalan you play already aggressive with the fianchetto stuff. And now after move d5 we play knight to f3, of course, and after something like c6 we can go bishop to g2. It doesn't matter, it's a different move order, but the basic idea is to play knight to f3 and then also the move bishop to g2. And there are basically two approaches, maybe even three approaches that black can play now. Black can play the open defense, which is d takes c4 immediately. That's now one of the approaches that he can do. The move d takes c4 is really an open battle. It's really a more tactical approach of blacks. Black can go also into solid structures with the move c6, building sort of a semi-Slav pawn structure, or will play bishop to e7 or bishop to b4, going into this really normal ideas of the closed Catalan. So where basically black doesn't want to touch the pawn on c4, doesn't want to create imbalanced pawn structures. Or what black can also do, that's why I call it three approaches, because many times black can maybe delay the move d takes c4, doesn't want to play d takes c4 immediately, but then plays a little bit around, tricks you maybe into some lines that are favorable for black, and then afterwards he played d takes c4 and maybe surprises you. So it's not maybe called the open defense, like the open defense would be immediately d takes c4, but as I said, his idea is to reach ideas of the open defense with d takes c4 by delaying first the move. As I said, he plays around, and then afterwards, if you don't play correctly the opening, he will then maybe surprise you with this aggressive approach, d takes c4. So let's see now, as I said, from a strategic point of view, what could happen, for instance, if our opponent continues with this c6 approach, for instance, with this semi-Slav structure here from black's perspective. If this position happens, we can say, first of all, that the light square bishop is a little bit paralyzed of black's by its own pawn structure, which is of course not good. So whenever you see from white's perspective that black is playing this semi-Slav structure, which is really a firm, a solid structure, nothing wrong with this move, and as I said, the light square bishop is a little bit bad, expect him to play b6 and bishop to a6. This will be his approach, how to include the light square bishop into the game. That's his basic idea, his basic concept. Of course, we will continue with bishop to g2, queen to c2, maybe b3, bishop to b2, knight to c3, knight to d2, maybe queen to d3. So white has a certain flexibility in the game, but black doesn't have such a flexibility in the game. So in order to get the light square bishop into the game, he will have to play eventually b6 and bishop to a6, or b6 bishop to b7, where the bishop, of course, again would be a little bit paralyzed by its own pawn structure here on d5. So as I said, when he's building this semi-Slav structure like this triangle system, expect him that he's going to play b6 and maybe, as I said, bishop to a6. So one of the different approaches is to go maybe with this idea, bishop to b4, and then he will retreat to bishop to e7. He will not trade off his dark square bishop, I believe me, in this particular scenarios, because his dark square bishop of blacks is too valuable here, because if you trade off the dark square bishops too early, then you're simply left with a bad bishop on c8 against this powerful bishop on g2. So then after bishop to d2, you can expect black to retreat here to e7, and then he'll again probably build this structure c6, b6, and then with the same plan bishop to a6. So as I said, this everything, when your opponent is not taking out the pawn on c4, here is called the closed Catalan. So he doesn't want to play the open Catalan with d takes c4. But as I said, even when this position happens, when this move bishop to e7 happens, maybe later he will play d takes c4 and surprises. So I'm not sure if it's called the closed or open Catalan anymore, but don't be too sure that the position will stay like this, because there are many double-edged lines, as I said, here for both sides. And as I said, the third approach is when your opponent is taking the pawn on c4, which is really here this imbalanced pawn structure. After d takes c4, we can notice that black is here a 4 versus 2 pawn majority, where many times black is attacking here on the queen side, is creating some madness, of course. Once you eventually also reach maybe the endgame stage, because if you keep somehow your pawn on c4, if you manage to defend it somehow with c6, b5, maybe you launch a flank attack later with the a5 and similar stuff. If you hang on to your extra pawn, then it could be very dangerous if the game reaches the endgame stage with a 4 versus 2 pawn majority. This could be very dangerous for white. On the other hand, what black is hoping, white is hoping for to get is this e4 goal, where we controlling with both of these pawns 4 important squares in the center of the board. And okay, maybe in the optimal world, of course, we would try bishop to c4, queen to c2, somehow defend our pawn and also pick up the pawn on c4. But in many occasions, it's not so. Black has also some opportunities, so that's why in the open defense, you can really expect a tactical battle, a great struggle for both sides, where you have to also calculate many things. So the open game is really beautiful in the Catalan opening. So let's start, for instance, with this position. When we play the move c4, let's start first of all with the closed variation. So when black doesn't want to pick up the pawn on c4, when we watch ideas for black, one of the basic concepts is the move knight to d7. So black delays the move c6, doesn't want to reach this semi-Slav structure immediately, maybe later. But you see, with the move knight to d7, black has also certain flexibility. Maybe he could also play c5 if necessary. But I think the main goal is to prevent knight to c3, because if knight to c3 happens, then As I said, black doesn't have to play the open game immediately. But now look at this. After d takes c4 with knight to b6, he could maybe protect his pawn on c4. Maybe he would play c6 then afterwards and similar stuff. Maybe he could lock the position also with move knight to d5. So this move knight to d7, in the beginning it doesn't seem that it's doing so much. It seems harmless, but actually it's quite effective because it prevents many ideas of white. So knight to d7 many times is of course met with b3, bishop to b2, queen to c2 is also an opportunity. So as I said, the move knight to d7 is also very often a very popular approach of black. So one of the main ideas after move knight to d7 and maybe knight to c3, when again black doesn't want to play d takes c4, is the so-called the Botvinnik variation with the move queen to d3. As I said, this is only when black is not taking the pawn on c4. Then in the Botvinnik variation, the basic goal for white is to play e4. e4 is the main goal, where we create dynamics in the center with 3 of the pawns in the center of the board. But again, don't forget about black's plan. As I said in the beginning, b6, bishop to a6. Notice the queen on d3 could be endangered by b6, bishop to a6. So this is also something that bothers white in the continuation of the game, where to go with the queen. Because in order to get a rook connection, you have to bring the queen out somehow in order to connect your rooks here. So with the move queen to d3, you have chances. With the move e4, but as I said, with b6, bishop to a6, don't get surprised if that happens. The queen could be very endangered. c5 is also an opportunity later, so black delays maybe the d takes c4 move, delays also the c5 move, but later the game becomes quite dynamic. So this is now the so-called Botvinnik variation. So queen to c2 is also a solid approach of white when again black is not picking up the pawn on c4. The idea is clear. D takes c4 can be met of course with queen to c4, and again maybe white could try ideas of knight to d2, maybe again e4. But look at this, after c6 again white has problems with the queen, and don't forget about it. Many times, let's flip the board here from black's perspective. Many times with b6, bishop to a6, and when the bishop is lined up like this, the rook will come on the c file and the queen could be endangered. Also in this Botvinnik variation, when we flip the board, notice that the queen is endangered in a different way. b6, bishop to a6, and the bishop is endangered the queen. So many times white has problems with the queen. Don't forget about it, because in some tactical sequences, when you're playing with the black pieces, you should really search for tactics against the queen, because the queen has its problems there. So as I said here, in this Botvinnik variation, the queen gets endangered by the bishop. Here in this queen to c2 system, the queen gets endangered by the rook. So as I said, both of these approaches are good for white. I'm not saying you win the game because your opponent played queen to c2, but as I said, that's why I call it the double-edged opening, because they're great opportunities for white, but they're also great opportunities for black. So for instance, one of the other cool approaches of white can be this double fianchetto. Also a very important strategic concept that shouldn't be underestimated by black, because after bishop to b2, you see the knight is not out already. White could cement the position around the square e5, would play on this beautiful tactical ideas to fix the pawn structure around the e5. Maybe could play f4, maybe, I don't know, queen to c2, again e4. So this double fianchetto we'll discuss also in the continuation of our series. As I said, very nice approach. Don't forget about this. Don't get surprised if this happens to you, because your opponent could have good spaces eventually if he manages to play bishop to b2, knight to e5. There's not an easy way how to kick away this knight from e5. Queen to c2 could control maybe your outpost here of black, so with the support of the bishop. So we have to say it, when black is building this semi-Slav structure, he doesn't have so many spaces with his pieces, so white can use it with bishop to b2, and as I said, could play on this double fianchetto and also with this hop on e5. So one of the also approaches could be here this normal bishop to b7, and there is this cool Spassky Gambit that you can play. Spassky invented this line with b5, where you giving up a pawn just in order to create some madness. After c takes b5, c takes b5, knight to b5, queen to a5. Look at this. White is up a pawn, but suddenly, as I said in the beginning, in these systems, when the queen is coming on c2, the queen could be endangered. A rook to c8 is going to happen, and there are many dirty ideas here for both sides. So don't get surprised by the Spassky Gambit. Maybe when it comes to computer relations, it's not so good for black, but there are many great games in the database that are won by black. So as I said, this is also something that white, for instance, should not forget. This is a really possibility, this beautiful Spassky Gambit. So let's see different opportunities. For instance, here, as I said, when we reach this position with queen to c2, rook to d1, and we have this semi-Slav structure, the basic strategic concept of blacks is to get out with the light square bishop. And white has to be careful how to react, because especially the c4 is weak, and there's no way, at least I would not recommend it, that white is going to play c takes d5, because after c takes d5, okay, this pawn is weak now on c6, but after c takes d5, look at this. The pawn structure gets symmetrical, so that's why white is keeping many times the tension in the center of the board here, because when we have a symmetrical pawn structure, the game itself, it's not so dangerous anymore. We can play now, I don't know, bishop to b7, maybe here knight to e4 is an opportunity. Again, bishop to a6, rook to c8. So again, the queen gets in danger. So that's why, look at this, after move b6 and bishop to a6 preparations, I'm not sure if white is going to ever pick up the pawn on d5. Maybe later when he has some opportunity with bishop to f4 and similar stuff, but these lines we'll also discuss. Bishop to f4 is met many times with knight to h5. So as I said, many opportunities are there. Don't worry, we'll cover every of these opportunities here in the continuation of the series. But as I said, in this intro video, I think we can solve already many things, because the bishop to a6 move is also something that should not be underestimated. So for instance, after move bishop to a6, there's the so-called Zagoriansky variation. The Zagoriansky variation is quite tricky, because white is using many times the a-file attack, because after bishop to a6, notice that the rook is not connected to the bishop on a6, and then with a5 there are some tensions on the a-file, the bishop could be endangered. So it's one of the methods. For instance, black continues with bishop to a6, then b3 is going to happen, and now after rook to c8, knight to d2, normal development. But we have to say the bishop is a little bit loose here on the a-file. So that's why black plays many times the so-called Sokolsky variation. The Sokolsky variation in these types of structures, when white is going with b3, black is going with a5, meets this a4 idea with a5, and then develops the light square bishop on a6 again, and is hitting again the pawn on c4. Also, in some occasions, the e2 could be endangered. Don't forget about this. There are many dirty tactical traps when the pawn on e2 is hanging, because notice when the move knight to d2 comes, then the queen is disconnected from the defense of the e2 pawn. So now this is the so-called Sokolsky variation with the move a5. So these are, I think, the basic strategic concepts of the closed variation. Every of these variations we will discuss further, with opportunities for both sides, with tactical approaches, with tactical ideas, with dirty traps, which are also very important to know, because many mistakes you can make, believe me or not. For instance, on the c file here, you can get destroyed by black. So as I said, we'll come to that. Don't forget about, but as I said, so far, these are the main ideas of the closed Catalan. So when it comes to the open Catalan, again, there are two approaches of white, I think. We'll study, of course, also different opportunities, but the basic approach is, the first basic approach is queen to a4, where we are trying to get our pawn back immediately, or we delay it at least for a move, and then later we're trying to attack the pawn on c4. But we want our pawn back. That's our basic goal, because if black doesn't react correctly, if for instance black plays too passively, then with queen takes c4 and e4, that's the goal. We want to pick up the pawn on c4 and get an advanced e4 pawn. But so far also what bothers us is, of course, the weak d4 pawn. So there are many, again, also problems for both sides in this particular lines. Notice that also white lost the tempo, because you played already with the queen, then you played the second time with the queen just in order to recapture your pawn. So, but this is one of the approaches. The other approach is when white ignores d takes c4, plays simply around, plays bishop to g2, will eventually even castle, will not go for the c4 pawn immediately, will delay it, will try maybe later to attack it with e3, queen to c2, then queen takes c4, maybe then afterwards e4. We'll try maybe to create some tactical madness, but it's a different approach that has to be discussed, and it's, I think, even the most popular way to play for both sides. I think there are many games, great games in this particular lines. The Immortals in the cut line, I think, were played in these lines where white gives up the pawn, doesn't even care for it immediately, delays, doesn't want to play queen to f4, doesn't want to pick up the pawn on c4, delays, castles, and then the game becomes quite tactical. The game becomes really, really a brutal, epic battle for both sides. So as I said, closed Catalan, open Catalan, there are cool approaches, there are semi-Slav structures, there are delaying moves, attacking moves, really, really many opportunities. And as I said, I promise you this will be a long series where we'll discuss many of these openings, especially because we have covered also the Queen's Gambit decline. If you have followed my YouTube chess channel, combined with the Catalan, I think you can have a great grip in d4 play. So as I said, be prepared. This will be a beautiful, beautiful chess opening series. So okay, if you want to see more about the Catalan, so as I said, there are already many great games that we have covered. Look at our playlist, really cool games we have covered already. And if you want to see this d4 Queen's Gambit decline series, here's also the link of our playlist where you can also have a great preparation in the normal Queen's Gambit, because this is not the normal Queen's Gambit, this is a dynamic really Queen's Gambit decline, really, really dirty opening. So here's also the playlist of our link of our playlist, so be prepared. This will be chess from another dimension. So see you soon with some new videos, and what to say, chess is the best.